We're pushing an hour behind schedule, so we're going to get moving.
Yep, good.
Calling to order the February Capital Program Committee. Members of the public,
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Today we have 5 public speakers. We have 4 in person, 1 remote. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers please adhere to MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. I would also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker is Jack Connors, and following him is Charlton D'Souza.
Good afternoon. I'm Jack Connors, Research and Communications Associate at the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA, PCAC. On Valentine's Day, contractors and riders got news worse than cheap chocolate. The MTA is having commitment issues, putting new capital projects contracts on hold thanks to lawsuits from pro-traffic fanatics. This drastic but fiscally prudent move is an arrow to the heart for MTA riders who will have to wait longer for accessibility projects, station improvements, and state of good repair work that's the literal nuts and bolts of our system. A super minority of second homeowners and politicians looking to score cheap political points should not be able to unilaterally delay projects that stand to benefit millions of New Yorkers, and New Jerseyans, ironically, as well. Already, Phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway, ADA upgrades on 20-plus stations, and signal modernization on the A, C, B, D, F, and M lines are on hold. Opponents of congestion pricing are eager to point out the deficits that decades of disinvestment have wrought on the region's transit system, yet offer no alternative. Not only is this disingenuous, it's downright deceptive to their constituents who are right to call for transit improvements in their communities. Riders should hear it like it is. According to the New York State Comptroller, $43 billion is needed to bring us to a state of good repair, a cost that only climbs with each delay of this essential program. We encourage riders to turn out in support of congestion relief at this week's hearings. For those who can't make it, we've made it easy to submit public comment in support of better transit and cleaner air by going to pcac.org/bettertransit. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charlton D'Souza. Following him is Jason Anthony.
All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Charlton D'Souza, President of Passengers United. So you all know that we're against congestion pricing, and the Hollis station now is not getting done because of the lawsuits with congestion pricing. So that's going to happen, and that's, it'll just go through the motions. So again, the reason why we don't support congestion pricing is because the express bus fares are $7. You have all these empty express buses running, and you have all these empty trains running on the railroad. Lower the prices, fill up seats. We have not seen a plan of extra service. Where are all these millions and millions of people going to go in the subway system? The subway system cannot handle it. It's a daily miracle to provide any service in the subway. And so now you're asking people to get out of their cars, get in a dangerous subway system where people are being attacked. So when y'all get the security situation under control, then all that will work. So, we wanted the Hollis station. We were excited about it. But because of the lawsuits, we're not going to get it now. It's not happening. And that's okay. It'll go through the motions. Hopefully someday the Hollis station will get done. And I know that everyone's like, what's he saying? But, in good faith, Mr. Chairman, we can't support it. Not until we have more service and, more discounts are given to the communities. And that you have to also think about the people with disabilities. What about them? What about people who have medical appointments in the city? They need that. Teachers, our first responders, our police officers, our firefighters, they should not have to pay that $15 fee to get in the city. And also transit workers. In fact, transit workers, this was not even included in their contracts. Like, you would think that that's a no-brainer to me. That should have been included in their contracts. So, guys, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Anthony.
Hey, Jano. Hey, Jamie. Good afternoon, Miss King, Midori, Sam, Shanifa, Norman, and the rest of the Capital Construction meeting. let's do some fact checking regarding congestion pricing. Since that yours truly testified in this month's New Jersey Transit Corporation board meeting, I was surprised that they're going to conduct some series of public hearings next week. But guess what, folks? It's going to be in person only, disenfranchising those who live here in New York. But guess what? Without congestion pricing, stations like Hollis and among others won't get renovated because of a lawsuit that New Jersey imposed against the MTA. Because New Jersey is acting like a NIMBY and won't settle the lawsuit. And because of that lawsuit, our system is in a state of crisis. And because of that lawsuit, signals won't be able to be upgraded. We won't be able to get more elevators and ramps. And everything will be rolled back because New Jersey won't settle the lawsuit. Think about it, folks. Because instead, they offered discounts on Valentine's Day. But us, we have to suffer the consequences. I'll see you later, folks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christopher Greif. Following Christopher, we'll roll over to our virtual speaker, Maddie Bucky's Highland.
Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christopher D. Greif, and I agree with my fellow colleague, and as he's been saying, the congestion pricing. But congestion pricing, we need the funding for a lot of reasons. Accessibility, technology, elevators, ramps, buses, and very important, our buildings that MTA are in, also we need to make sure they're funded as well. But accessibility needs to be in this category. And with capital right now, as the last capital meeting I was at the public hearing, I mentioned one thing that the railroads need to update more is the assistant buttons. As you know, there are some at the stations, but we need to make sure Metro North has them. Further up the lines, the diesel turf needs it as well. And I did say that there. It is extremely important so wheelchairs, walkers, and baby strollers, I don't want to leave out baby strollers because I will get hit by mothers, especially my own. We want to make very clear that the alert button is there for a reason so crews can see it, so they can make sure they can get on or off safely. The safety is the strongest thing we got to keep. As we had the safety committee before, I'm still going to say accessibility, safety. We still need to continue that. And with the congestion pricing, and I will say this again and every time, we need the congestion pricing for accessibility for seniors and people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Maddie Bucky's Highland.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman. I'm Matty W. Bucky's Highland. Today I'm going to speak about accessibility. You know, I spoke at the testify meeting along with Mr. Anthony and Mr. Greif and his mother, though we all have one thing in common. We all support accessibility. Accessibility that is key to this Metropolitan Transportation Authority. As someone who has autism and is interested in joining the ACTR and the ADA task force for the Long Island Railroad, I can't express, we need more funding for accessibility. I do support congestion pricing, but I do oppose the price of it because of its high. If it was like $7 or $8, I would support it, but not at 15, I cannot support it at all. Priorities are funding, because obviously there's lawsuits going to happen, and that could ultimately end up in the United States Supreme Court in Washington, and it could strike down congested pricing, or if we have another president or a secretary, they can pull the plug on it. And that's critical funding that is required to make sure that the Metropolitan Transportation Authority is a 21st century system. I'm going to speak again about congested pricing on Thursday's public hearing. I invite you all to attend to testify your thoughts and beliefs on that. Thank you. God bless you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Chair, that concludes the public comment session.
Thank you, Ms. King. Let me turn it over to Mr. Torres Springer at this point.
Thank you, Chair. Before we get to regular business for this committee, I think we're going to ask my colleague Carmelo Arroyo for an important accessibility update, which relates to the impacts of congestion pricing. That is really the key subject matter we're here to discuss today.
Thank you so much, Jamie. So every month I speak to this body on the progress that we're doing on accessibility, elevators opening, ramps, so many other technologies, innovations that we're rolling out. Unfortunately, this month I have a different tune, not because that work isn't happening, but because we are hitting the pause button on a lot of our accessibility enhancements and the work that we had set out to do, to focus on another trajectory, continuation of accessibility at the MTA going forward. And I'm talking about congestion pricing, as Jamie said. I'm here to talk to you about where we are today on the development for congestion pricing, and if we could load up a different presentation, I think that'd be great.
I'll come back.
I'm here to talk to you about where we're at today with the disability exemption component of congestion pricing. And as you all know, when congestion pricing was passed as law in the state of New York, there were two exemptions. One for the disability community. Persons with disabilities are not going to be charging congestion pricing fee. And of course, emergency vehicles, ambulances, and others. So I'd like to give you a little bit of context of where we're at with that today. So we are still planning to go forward in June, should we prevail in the courts, and are able to move forward past the litigations you heard of from one of our public speakers earlier. Unfortunately, yes, those folks from across the river have forgotten that over 90,000 of their residents come into New York City every day and utilize our trains, our buses to get to work, to school, and to see their loved ones in the theater. So much happening here in New York. However, I want to start off by talking about some good news. The disability exemption, we haven't spoken to you about openly, but we did have a plan that some of you might have heard about where we were leveraging disability license plates issued by the DMV. And in conversations with a lot of the advocates and folks around the MTA, we realized that that wasn't going to be an equitable program for us to roll out for the community, mainly because someone who is blind, let's say, is not eligible for a disability license plate. The DMV doesn't give that to that body. And so for many other reasons, we pivoted from that initial take on how the exemption would be rolled out. And we are now working with what we're calling IDEP, an Individual Disability Exemption Plan. It is a very fair program where the main takeaway is going to be one person with disabilities who applies for IDEP. If they are eligible, they will get one vehicle, and we're focusing on that license plate of that one vehicle for the exemption. Now, I know that there's some ripples with that program. A lot of people in the community would like to see more vehicles, but we think that this is a prudent approach, and I want folks to understand that this is what we're coming out the door with. This is a solution that a lot of our advocates are happy with. A lot of the elected officials have been pleased to hear. And of course, organizational disability exemption plans will continue to roll out so that vehicles like ambulettes who carry people with disabilities aren't being charged. Our accessoride vehicles and the vehicles who carry accessoride customers are not being charged. And to create a streamlined process, we are looking to leverage our existing 170,000 registrants who qualify and are already in our ecosystem for paratransit to get an automatic approval for an IDEP system. So those folks in paratransit will be able to simply apply and automatically get approved. They'll have to upload one license plate to get that system. Other folks who are looking for the exemption will have to apply and come to an assessment center to ensure that they have a qualifying mobility disability for the disability exemption. We look forward to hearing from the public on the thoughts at our 4 upcoming hearings, but I am very proud of what we've come up with, and it's been an all hands on deck. B&T, paratransit, headquarters, and folks in the disability community. So I'm really proud of what we're coming out with. to come back, when I first got here, I spoke to you about my redefining of accessibility. I am not the chief disability officer. I'm the chief accessibility officer. And that's important because accessibility is truly universal. And I wanted to paint a picture of who stands to benefit most from congestion pricing. It is our 65 million tourists who come into the city every year with luggage, who need assistance to come through our system. It is parents. And on average, we see 130,000 births in New York City every year. That's 130,000 strollers being added to our pavement, our train systems, and our buses. And of course, our aging New Yorkers, over 1.5 million aging New Yorkers, whom I'd like to say, forget about the Carolinas, forget about Florida. I want you to age in place in New York City, in the communities that you helped build. But in order to do that, we need to create a more accessible system. And of course, over 1 million New Yorkers with disabilities citywide. And we have a lot on the ballot here, a lot to lose should congestion pricing not come through. Congestion pricing is a pivotal part of this current capital plan. $55 billion, 15 of those 55 are expected to come from congestion pricing. And what will that give New Yorkers? Faster, faster, faster movement. For those New Yorkers who must drive, they should love congestion pricing because it'll alleviate an estimated 200,000 vehicles off the road. That means better traffic for our buses, some of which move at 6 miles an hour. Some of you board members could run faster than that. It'll move paratransit vehicles, the 33,000 trips we do every day for New Yorkers with disabilities. Well, they are stuck in traffic too. And that is not the transit system that we would like to give them. And of course, it'll deliver more trains, newer trains. Some of us rode the R211s. Andrew, I know you're a big fan. Well, we need congestion pricing to continue to roll out those new subways and buses. But of course, our capital investments, which is where 80% of the funding from congestion pricing will be going to. Over 250 new electric buses, which have a huge suite of accessibility enhancements, wider doors, bigger ramps, over 7 flip-up seats, and a lot more visual and audible assistance for communication, effective communications. Over $1 billion for the next generation of subway cars, and public announcement systems. We hear every month here from John Padula about the importance of announcement systems in our project, in the system for people who are blind, who use the system every day to know where they're at, to know about service changes. Well, guess what? There's a $300 million project in this capital plan that would have enhanced public announcements at over 70 stations. That's on hold because of lack of funding from congestion pricing. This plan is historic. I am so proud to be sitting behind this table with a group of folks that are doing right at the MTA for EJ communities, for minority communities who were placated by previous administrations, including Black and brown communities, including low-income communities, and of course the disability communities, who people said, take what you got and be happy. Well, not this group here. We are undoing that harm. And I'm saying undoing that harm because I too live in Harlem, and we have great projects that are on hold because of congestion pricing. But let me give you a little look at what's being stopped because of the lack of this funding. And I know Jamie's going to go into further details about this, but as you see here, borough-wide equity in this capital plan, a focus, putting our money where our mouth is in all these communities that were not getting some love in the past, were not anymore. These are over 20 stations that are put on hold because of lack of funding from congestion pricing, and I know Jamie will give you more details about that. So that's why every New Yorker should care about passing congestion pricing, coming up to our public hearings, and telling our foes that we need congestion pricing because we need faster traffic, we need better traffic, transportation, and we need a system that works for all. So this is definitely a defining moment for accessibility, a defining moment for transit equity here in the 5 boroughs, and we hope to roll this out in June with this IDEP program that I presented to you all. This is really historic, and I hope that all New Yorkers come out because you want to drive in streets that move, because you want better buses, because you want cleaner air, or because you care about accessibility. You're one of those 65 million tourists, you're one of those parents with strollers, you're a New Yorker with a disability, you're an Asian New Yorker who wants to age in place with some grace and dignity, moving around an accessible transit system. Thank you so much, Jamie and Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Q, and thank you for your Thank you. Thank you for what you bring to this issue and what you bring to us every day. I know how passionate you've been about the need to execute on all these promises. Mr. Albert.
Thanks for that, Q. That was really great. One of the ways to qualify, it said on your slide, for an IDEP was to appear at an assessment center. How many are there and where are they?
Thank you so much. So we're still putting this program together, but as of right now, we would definitely be looking to roll out assessment centers in each borough, including Manhattan. And these are assessment centers separate from our paratransit assessment centers that many of you are aware of. This is a new operation that's going to be administered by B&T, and these assessment centers will be citywide in each borough.
Okay. Any other comments? Dr. Rizzo.
Yeah, Q, I just wanted to start off by saying I really applaud you and your team's efforts on putting this together. I think IDEP is fantastic, really robust and rigorous. I think one thing we need to be mindful of as we continue to develop this concept is the initial administrative inertia of standing up a program like this. So I wonder if you have any thoughts aside from leveraging AAR, which is a great program that Chris oversees, where we have a database of those qualified already with disabilities. Are there other programs we can use, such as PPPD from NYC's DOT program, that also has a rigorous assessment to help seed the IDEP program, so folks can easily raise their hand, metaphorically speaking, and then we don't have to worry as much about administrative burden?
Thank you for that question, Dr. Rizzo. We are speaking to our partners in the city. I know that I used to work at DOT, so I know how robust that operation is, 24,000 applicants in that ecosystem. So they would definitely qualify. They've already gone through an assessment, a rigorous assessment, but we're speaking to the city of New York and making sure that they're willing and able to help us leverage for that very reason. We don't want to burden New Yorkers with disabilities or folks with disabilities at large. It's a good point to distinguish that PPPD holders, as you mentioned, do not have to live in the city. These are folks who drive in the city of New York, who have been through a medical assessment and already been cleared for disability exemptions or qualifying programs. So we would be happy to continue conversations with the city of New York, and hopefully they do come on board. Thank you, Dr. Rizzo.
Q, just making sure I understand, are you and Dr. Rizzo talking about the city's parking placard program for disabled folks? Am I correct?
That is what Dr. Rizzo asked about,
Okay.
the parking permit for persons with disabilities, which the city of New York administers.
Okay. And you are talking to the city about getting that group of people automatically enrolled in the new program, correct?
It's an active and ongoing conversation with the city of New York, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we do want to make sure that those folks don't have to go through another medical assessment, correct?
That is my goal.
Okay.
Mr.
Well,
Chair.
I'm sure the city folks feel the same way, so we got to make that happen. All right. Any other comments? Ms. Lopez.
Just a quick question, Q, on the IDEP program, or perhaps it might be too soon to tell. How long would be the process? How long would it take somebody from applying to actually getting a response, whether or not they're eligible for IDEP, or approved for IDEP, I should say?
That's a great question. Our thoughts right now are to open up the application process 60 days prior to congestion pricing starting. So folks who would want to apply for IDEP would have that 60-day window to apply. If they are already one of our 170,000 paratransit riders, they will get an automatic approval. They'll have to upload that one license plate, and they would get that exemption for that one license plate. Anyone else outside of that system, as Dr. Rizzo mentioned, should we also leverage PPPD holders? That would be an additional 24,000 vehicles that would be automatically approved. Anyone outside of that would have to come to an assessment center. Our goal is to get anyone who raises their hand in through those assessment centers before congestion pricing starts.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. I want to throw it back to Jamie. I neglected to ask, are there any changes to the work plan?
No changes to the work plan.
All right.
Chair.
President's report.
Thank you. Today, and I also appreciate everything that Q is doing and the great working relationship that we have. And we are both deeply committed to making sure that we're able to advance these additional ADA accessibility improvements within this capital program that are being held back now. So today, unfortunately, what we need to focus on mostly is what we are not getting done as a result of the delays in congestion pricing. Before I get to that, I do want to report to the committee that we did make our third Metro North station fully accessible this year with the opening of a new street level elevator and a connecting sidewalk at Purdy's on the Harlem line. Again, these are helpful things, reference points for what we have been able to get done and are not going to be able to get done with the delays to congestion pricing in the future. We're continuing our commitment to modernizing our fleet and innovating with a spirit of experimentation. The governor joined the MTA in rolling out 20 new open gangway R211 cars earlier this month. That's got a fair bit of play, but we're excited about that ability to renew the rolling stock within our system. This work is possible due to the high capacity organization that we've created at C&D. We continue to build that organization, and shortly we'll be releasing our strategic plan for 2024 that's focused on these three priorities. The other bit of reporting I need to do is 2023 was a real testament to that capacity as we completed a record of over $7 billion of critical capital work within our system. We're extremely proud of our delivery folks who led those completions, led by Mark Roche, who's here today. Much more of it was on schedule and on budget than ever before, and we've showed that we saved over $1 billion last year. And today we're announcing that since a lot of projects have been moving, we will be able to achieve more than $8 billion of completions this year. This brings us to our current and future commitments. As the committee knows, in February of each year, we bring the board our anticipated targets for commitments and completions. Unfortunately, you'll find in your books a commitment plan for only $2.9 billion for 2024 due to the delays caused by congestion pricing, by the litigation against congestion pricing. This is only the bare level of investment needed to award work with federal funding, emergency work, or keeping some critical work that's already going underway. The level of investment needed to continue to improve, maintain, and expand our system and make it more accessible needs to be put on hold. Let me explain why. And actually, let me just make sure it's clear. That $2.9 billion is really takes us down from these historic highs that we've been hitting in pursuing the capital program. On average, $9 billion a year of commitments the last 3 years, despite the fact that we weren't able to award a major CBTC project in 2023. We had the potential to get to roughly $12 billion in awards this year, but again, we're only able to achieve $2.9 billion. Congestion pricing is foundational to the MTA's capital work. It will raise $15 billion, 30% of the 2020 to 2024 program, but it represents more than 50% of the remaining commitment authority that we have in 2020 to 2024. So for the rest of this capital program, it's all about congestion pricing. With several lawsuits pending, congestion pricing is at risk of delay, despite its benefits to the vast majority of commuters who use transit coming into the city. To be clear, the MTA is confident on the legal issues. The environmental review and community outreach we undertook and the analysis reflected in the 3,000-plus page study were extremely thorough. But with any lawsuit comes risk, especially of delay, and we can't award contracts until the funding is assured. As a result, the MTA capital program must be placed mostly on hold. While litigation is pending, we will not be issuing any new construction contract solicitations with very limited exceptions. And today we have some specifics for the board and the riding public on the impacts of this delay. Q got us started here with the first critical category. But congestion pricing is necessary to advance some of the MTA's most important priorities, as I said before, making the system more reliable, more accessible, and more equitable, including through long-awaited expansions. The impacts of these delays will be devastating, as this map, which will circulate and make clear, is a little hard to read, It shows a subset of what the $15 billion in congestion pricing will do for our transit system, and it makes clear that the entire system will be impacted. Let me go through a few highlights of these categories. Q described this already, but accessibility is one of our top priorities. There's no greater symbol of that than the settlement agreement we reached with disability advocates in 2022. That historical settlement is predicated on full funding for the program without delay. Without it, 20 or more ADA stations in this capital program are at risk. Q highlighted these, but look where they're at risk. All 5 boroughs are impacted. 5 stations in the Bronx, from Mott Haven to Kingsbridge to Wakefield, Briarwood and Jamaica in Queens, Southern Brooklyn stations in Bensonhurst and Coney Island, Nostrand Avenue at the intersection of Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy, major complexes, 42nd Street, Bryant Park, and Lexington Avenue, 59th Street in Manhattan. These are really critical stations to make ADA accessible. The other big pillar of this capital program is signal modernization, and this board knows how important that is. We're replacing the aging signal, track, and switch infrastructure that the system currently runs on and provide the modern benefits of CBTC, communication-based train control, in terms of reliability and capacity. Late last year, those CBTC upgrades on the Fulton AC line in Brooklyn was the first project to be put on hold. It remains on hold, as does now the 6th Avenue line that would improve service across the B, D, F, and M lines throughout the 4 boroughs. These are vital state of good repair projects, including the replacement of 17 interlockings, 70 switches. They date back to the 1930s. They also represent the single most impactful investment that we can make to improve service in the system. On the 7 line, where CBTC was first installed, on-time performance rose from 68% to more than 90%. Between these 2 projects, more than 1.5 million riders a day would stand to benefit from one end of those lines to the other, the A and the C, the B, the D, the F, and the M. That's all the way to Far Rockaway, up to the Bronx, Upper Manhattan, Northern and Eastern Queens, lots of transit-dependent neighborhoods where folks are dependent on quality service and reliable service to get to their jobs that they still come to day in and day out. Bed-Stuy, East New York, Lower East Side, so many of the neighborhoods that make up the fabric of this city, and where folks are working and getting to work on the train are not going to achieve reliability benefits because of this delay. Just on these lines, we serve more riders than the next 5 largest subway systems in the country combined. So this work that is now on hold is a huge priority for us. There's more. Also at risk is another $1 billion in funding for new subway cars, like those R211s that are now in service for the A and the C lines. The railroads, this delay could impact our ability to purchase new M9A cars for Long Island Railroad and Metro North. Remember, new rolling stock isn't just about customer comfort. Important though that is, it's how we keep the system running. We measure the reliability of train cars in terms of mean distance between failures, how far a car travels before it has a mechanical issue. We've gone from mean distance between failure in the 1980s of 5,000 miles to north of 200,000 miles today through the renewal of rolling stock, and we have a lot more to do. Now, those subway cars purchased in the 1980s are 40 years old and they're starting to decline. We can either keep up the pace and replace them, or wind up with the same reliability crisis that prompted the capital program in the first place. That's part of what's being funded by congestion pricing. Our sustainability program is also at risk. Congestion pricing directly supports the purchase of 270 electric buses on top of the 205 that we ordered at the end of last year. And just as critically, the installation of charging infrastructure at 10 depots to support those buses. Electrification is at the core of the MTA's commitment to achieve emissions reductions of 80% by 2040. But the impacts are not just global. Locally, electrifying the fleet that serves low-income neighborhoods with high asthma rates is a vital matter of environmental justice. So this is a secondary benefit of the environmental improvements achieved in the first place by congestion pricing. Our electrification plan prioritizes environmental justice communities, so bus depots in historically underserved communities will be the first to replace diesel hybrid buses with electric. You'll see that on the map. East New York, Harlem, Kingsbridge, some of these other neighborhoods, these are the neighborhoods that are going to benefit first from those battery electric buses and the investment in congestion pricing. We've talked a lot about this. It's been 52 years since the first groundbreaking for Second Avenue Subway. 2 generations of East Harlem residents grew up waiting on this promise. We are able to put a shovel in the ground. We are putting a shovel in the ground on the early works, but the rest of the project will have to be on hold until the litigation against congestion pricing is resolved. Beyond the projects that customers directly see, this will also impact reliability and state of good repair. This is what keeps our system running. More than 80% of the capital program is dedicated to core infrastructure, and while we've tried to avoid impacts to the most important state of good repair projects, with a third of the capital program at risk, it simply isn't possible to avoid it. Here's a subset of what's at risk. Structural repairs on the D and the F lines in Brooklyn, the 1 in the Bronx, the 7 in Queens, the overcoating work. We've talked about the way we're going about this in an efficient way in the past. We do that to keep our elevated lines standing. That work is at risk. It will also impact more targeted structural repairs in stations and at specific locations like bridge rehabilitation on the 6th line in the Bronx. Repairs to our power system, we've talked a lot about this in our 20-year needs assessment. Substation renewals and repairs that keep power to the trains running is at risk. And there's impact to our ability to keep our shops and yards and bus depots running. All the service we provide relies on back-of-house spaces where we maintain our vehicles and equipment. Without congestion pricing, it will mean deferring critical investments that our workers and the system relies on. And this impacts the railroads too. There are many projects, a couple of examples, the water remediation we need to do to make sure we're preserving Atlantic Terminal for Long Island Railroad, further electrification work of the Hudson Line are at risk. And I just want to remind everyone that these projects are critical not only for service to New Yorkers, but for the thousands of men and women who depend on these projects and the prevailing wage jobs that come from them for their livelihoods. The capital program, when it was initially approved and funded, was estimated to support nearly 60,000 jobs. Over 20,000 of these jobs are supported by the funding from congestion pricing. And the impact is statewide. Nearly a quarter of those jobs are in New York State. Outside of New York City, the nearly 2,000 jobs at stake in Long Island, 2,000 in the Hudson Valley, hundreds near Albany and upstate. This is a statewide impact. And firms are also impacted. It's not just important what we build, but how we build it. The MTA is an important source of work for small businesses, minority and women-owned and disadvantaged business enterprises. We're #1 in New York State government in terms of payments. We can reasonably assume that this congestion pricing funding represents billions of dollars in work for those businesses as well. I'll close on this. You'll recognize this image. In 2017, the subways had on-time performance of 65%, the lowest since the 1970s. Since then, it's increased to 85%, the highest in a decade. That's thanks to the work of our operating partners, but also thanks to the capital interventions that we've made since that low point and the summer of hell. And the railroads are similarly setting records for on-time performance. We either can invest in our capital program, as you see on the right, or we can return to the bad old days and see service decline. That's not just some far-off decision to make at this point. We face that decision now with the $15 billion in vital projects that are delayed due to congestion pricing litigation. Thank you, Chair.
Wow.
Can I ask a question?
Well, I want to open it up to the board, but I just want to go out by saying that I have not seen a more powerful presentation of the impact that congestion pricing funding is going to have on our system. And all of us have been talking about this episodically for a while. You really nailed it and have brought it home. So I just compliment you and your team for conveying it that well. Ms. Barbas, Mr. Albert, Ms. Mihalcis, Mr. Brown. Okay.
Yeah, one question for President Torres Springer. Outside of the very significant impacts that you just laid out due to the delay, can you talk about any secondary effects that you haven't outlined, and you can elaborate on that?
Thank you. We did mention that the employment, the contracting for MWBEs, those are big impacts. I think also within the system itself, we mentioned that, each of these investments we're making leverages improvements made as a result of prior or current investments. So a good example is, we do have 2 lines that are up and running on CBTC now, and those lines were done years ago because they were separate; they weren't interlined. Now we're in the process of getting 5 more lines improved with CBTC. And that's going very well. Our teams are running those projects. We're bringing those to fruition. But in fact, even the benefits to those lines cannot be achieved unless we get the A and the C done and the B and the D and the F and the M. So Queens Boulevard East and West, those improvements, the Culver line, the 8th Avenue line, those are lines that we're currently investing billions of dollars in, and we will not be able to realize the benefits in terms of reliability and frequency of CBTC until we get these projects done as well.
Mr. Albert, Ms. Mahalsis.
I don't know that this has a definitive answer, but pending a positive resolution in court, how long would it take for everything to start up again?
It's a good question. We can't really speculate about the timing of the litigation. All I can say is the sooner we can get these delays over with, the sooner we can get back to our program. One of the things we've worked really hard on as an organization in the last few years is putting the systems in place so that we can continually be competing and awarding capital work. That's how it works. If you have to do it all at once, you can't get it all awarded, and there's a huge gap in the system that's caused by effectively demobilizing and then having to remobilize. So that's what's at risk is even if we get through this in the next few months, we're piling up all the awards that my friend Mr. Iceland is going to have to make in such a way that it's going to sort of cause these knock-on snowball effects of slowing us down.
Are we also running the risk of each of these projects costing more the longer it takes?
Absolutely. Thank you. Absolutely. I mean, we will get less for, we will get less for our money because with each passing month, and particularly during these inflationary times, we see major increases to prices.
I just want to underscore that point. Because we had such a robust capital program coming out of COVID, we moved much more quickly, as Jamie's shown you from both their awards and their completions, to get the machine warmed up. Now the rest of the world is warmed up because of the Biden infrastructure plan. So we will be competing for contractors and resources with regionally and nationally as a result of this delay. It has consequences beyond just the passage of time. Ms. Mahalsis.
So that was my question. Did we try to quantify for every month that congestion pricing is delayed from all these frivolous lawsuits, what it's actually going to cost us to do these programs when and if we get the green light to move forward?
Yeah, I don't have an exact quantification. I can say that we will start to see tens of millions of dollars in escalation costs for when we award this work. That is a real risk.
Mr. Brown.
Yeah, congratulations on a very clearly thought out and beautifully presented speech. Not a single or like was involved. You didn't have to gather your thoughts. I thought it was very clear. And I think it's right. You just follow this passage of time here in the last 8 years as we were struggling with CBTC on a number 7, the constant barrage of bad media we got creating the 7. And it sat there kind of in isolation. However, there were some externalities from that, which you can see in every other system that touches it. They all got better. And that comes to what passes for wisdom in my little brain, sort of a Newtonian concept of, an object at rest tends to stay at rest until acted upon by an outside force, and an object in motion tends to continue in motion until acted on by an outside force. And I suggest this lawsuit in Jersey is kind of like the apple falling on Newton's head, and if that ever happened. And, you know, I think you guys have properly described it, but, you know, you looked at that map, I was looking at that map, looking at all the things that interface with the A and the C and the F. All of those, every system that touches it is going to improve even with the old technology because you got CBTC in there. But without CBTC, the opposite will happen. It will tend to collapse on itself. And, you know, I trust you guys to handle this. You're doing a great job on it.
I mean, I just got to say, just not to miss the opportunity to remind everybody, when people get on a bus from New Jersey and they get off at that George Washington Bridge bus terminal, and there are a lot of them, including, I think, our billionth customer last year was somebody who commutes that way, he gets on the A. He gets on the A train. So thanks to the litigation, that and many other Bergen County customers are going to have a crappier commute because more New Jerseyites get on the MTA system than drive by a lot. So this is that one aspect of this dispute is very counterproductive for our brothers and sisters across the Hudson.
As much as I dislike quoting from Chris Christie, wouldn't it be something like time for some traffic problems in Fort Lee?
It's their own, it seems to be a motto that keeps on giving. Other comments or questions? Thank you for, again, very powerful presentation. That was the business of this meeting. We just needed everybody to understand what's going on and what it all means. But one thing I did not do was the minutes. So there are minutes. Yes, please.
So if you could just give us 2 minutes on where we are as timing, what do we think is going to happen in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
I'll do my best. I don't see Paige's here. She'll correct me if I get it wrong. But where we are is that we have briefing schedules for the resolution, or at least a decision on the summary judgment motions in the Jersey case. There's also an aggressive briefing schedule on the New York cases, which have now been consolidated into the Southern District. So that both courts on both sides of the Hudson are acting like they want to have a resolution before our scheduled June go live for congestion pricing. That's what we're operating on. Did I say it right? Yes. Okay. All right. Procurements, Mr. Iceland.
Thank you. Construction and Development is presenting 2 procurement actions totaling $9.3 million to the Capital Program Committee for approval this month. The procurement package contains 2 competitive actions. The first is an award of a contract for project management consultant services. It is to assist with the administration and oversight of a contract for the painting and miscellaneous lighting improvements at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. The second item is a modification to furnish and install dampers at 5 signal houses on the Harlem and Hudson lines. These items are described in detail in the staff summaries contained within your committee books, and I hereby submit them for your consideration and vote.
And Chair, just for background, just lest we seem like we're contradicting ourselves, this is, you know, as we said, we have a $2.9 billion, commitment plan. This is a program manager to support a major contract we already awarded at the end of last year for bridges and tunnels for work on the Verrazano Bridge, and that change order that was mentioned was about $100,000. There's work we have to do just to keep the system going, but that's what we're going to be seeing for the next few months.
With that clarification, may I have a motion on these? Mr. Chu, second Ms. Barbas. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The procurements carry forward. So back to minutes. There were minutes of what meeting? Of January Capital Program Committee minutes have been distributed and are available on the websites. Any changes? Any comments? Not hearing none. May I have a motion to approve? Thank you, Mr. Chu. Thank you, Ms. Barbas. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The minutes are approved. And with that, I can conclude the meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Thank you, Ms. Mahaltos, for the second. The meeting is adjourned.